Hello, so today I wanted to go over a future update that we're probably going to talk about a lot more later, but I wanted to get a little bit of a reaction to this upcoming 14.5 patch. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with the patch numbers, this week on Wednesday, patch 14.4 came out. So this is the patch for the week after, so I think it would be on May 28th. And the reason this is stirring up a little bit of discussion is because it's actually a major item rework, which has been a while since we had one of those. So I wanted to go over it because especially this week, I was actually working on an item guide on my channel. If you don't know, I do daily TFT guides. If you like my content, make sure to like and subscribe. But I was actually working on the updated set 14 item guide. I was going to start doing it either today or tomorrow. And then I heard that the items are changing, so now I have to be like, okay, let me read this document and see what's going on. But at the same time, I thought it'd be fun to talk about my reactions and talk about the items as they are and why they might be changing and what I kind of see that's gonna do for the patch 14 or set 14 at TFT. So anyways, let's go into it. Last time I remember a large item change, I didn't like it too much. There were two major ones that I can remember. The oldest one that I remember that was really vivid was that they made certain components make different items, and then they turned some of those items into Ornn artifacts. And then there was another one where they just added all of the Ornn artifacts. The one where they added all the Ornn artifacts, I didn't like it too much, so I hope there's not too many new artifacts here, but I'm assuming that maybe they'll switch some items and then make the previous versions of them into Ornn artifacts, but let's see how it goes. So first change that we see here, Redemption being changed to Spirit Visage. So it looks like that's probably going to be removing the Spirit Visage Ornn artifact. I think this was a little bit confusing sometimes for some people as well, because Redemption seemed very similar to Spirit Visage. Redemption was a really good item. I actually liked it a lot. It was very good with rerolls, very good with bruiser front lines or people that had a lot of HP, because Redemption kind of had an AoE healing effect. So I'm assuming they're removing that because this was that was the main reason. But let's see. So stats seems like a cross between the two of them. Durability and HP seems like in line with Redemption, and then it's just restoring 2.5 missing health, so it doesn't have the AoE effect anymore, and I'm assuming that's what they're gonna say. They're getting rid of the AoE healing. Yeah, it's the last support-esque item. Yeah, that makes sense. I really liked it. This actually makes me sadder that it looks like Anima Visage was one of my favorite Ornn artifacts because it was so flexible and you could just put on anybody. It's probably going to get removed, which also means that my Ornn artifact guide is now going to be outdated, so everybody that looks at it is just going to probably that's going to be so bad for me. So as a YouTuber, this is horrible, right? Gameplay wise, it's fine. I wish I still had a flexible Ornn artifact, but what can you do? As a YouTuber, this sucks because Anima Visage starts with A. So that means that somebody's going to click on my Ornn artifact guide. They're going to see that Anima Visage is still in the guide, and then they're just going to click off because they think everything else is irrelevant and outdated. And it's just oh, great. I wish they didn't change the one that started with A. If they changed Zonya's, it would have been a little bit better for me. But, it's okay. It is what it is. Runaan's Kraken's Fury. Okay, so I'm not familiar with the League stuff because I didn't play League. So Runaan's getting changed makes sense. I remember Runaan's being a pretty reliable item that I would usually make around set 9, set 9.5, even a little bit in set 10. But it has fallen off dramatically. Even Guinsoo holders, a lot of times you don't optimize around Runaan's. It's very particular on which units want it. A lot of times it's they have either empowering autos or they have ults that also proc the Runaan's. So it's very rare that it's super useful. So a lot of times it feels like an awkward use of components. So I'm assuming they're just gonna make it a little bit different in terms of how it behaves, because it maybe without the spread effect. So let's see. 25 AD, 10% attack speed, magic resist. So the magic resist, it comes because it's a cloak item, right? It's going to be bow and cloak, so it's always going to give a little magic resist. And then what do we have here? We have attacks grant 3% stacking attack damage. That seems good. That seems interesting, for sure. So this seems like you pair it with some attack speed. It's already a starting attack speed item. Pair it with a Guinsoo or something. I mean, this seems really good. I think this makes an item that otherwise you usually don't want to put on most units. Definitely is going to be maybe even a staple AD item. I feel like this is AD is a little bit different because AD also scales your auto attacks. So it's actually really, really powerful if you pair with attack speed and you have stacking AD. It's not as it's similar to some of the units that used to have archangels that would have an ability or a passive where their AP would work in their auto attacks. You can kind of look at it a similar way. So it actually seems pretty substantial to me. This seems like a good item. If I were looking at this, I feel like this is gonna be in the rotation compared to how Runaan's is now, where it's very rarely something that you make. outside of particular lines like Vayne. Let's see the change. Of course, it just makes sense. I feel like it's just really like awkward. On-hit effects phased out. Succeed a slim number of champions. Yeah, okay, yeah, like Vayne, for example, this set. Last set, it was like Ezreal if you played last set. Swapping out Kraken's Fury plans on creating an artifact. Okay, so they're going to make a Runaan style artifact later. That makes sense, and then it can work more in lines with that. And then obviously they're probably going to disable category 5. That makes sense. So Runaans might come back as an artifact. That's something we've seen in the past. Like a notable example is RFC, Rapid Fire Cannon. That is an Ornn artifact nowadays, but back in the day, you used to make it with 2 bows, and that was something that you did in set 9 and set 9.5. It was really popular because there's lots of units that used it, and then they moved it to artifact, and they revamped it when they did all the added artifacts. They added it as an artifact, and they changed what bows make, so that makes sense. I think this is good. It just makes a better use of some extra components, and it can help out with some of those AD lines, because sometimes, like, even myself, I sometimes just make Runaans out of, like, item economy sake. Now it gives you a little bit of an out, a little bit of an option there. Statikk Shiv going into Void Staff. So, oh wait, one more thing to talk about Runaans. So Runaans as well suffered from the problem of the item components being really valuable. So for example, it takes a bow and a cloak. So if you're playing an AD comp, a bow can make a Last Whisper, right? And a cloak can make an Even Shroud. So you would have a really hard time making Shred. So you really have to have a good spot for Runaans. That's the only thing that this item might have as a problem. It's the same thing with like Adaptive Helm. Sometimes you don't like to make it because it cuts out your opportunities to make the associative sundering or shredding that your team needs. So that's going to be something that's really important to think about when making the item. As good as this item is, you might nerf your damage if you eliminate your ways of hitting your sundering or your shredding. Speaking of that, Statikk Shiv. So Statikk Shiv was an item that I think was really strong, and I almost always liked it. It was just very expensive because, like, expensive in the sense that usually when you're playing AP, you want tiers to help your casters cast, right? Make a mana item. And then Statikk Shiv needed a tier, so it was like a little bit awkward sometimes to find all the tiers that you needed. It's getting changed into a Void Staff. Okay, so let's see what this does now. 35 ability power, sure. 15 mana, sure. 10% attack speed, okay. Attacks and magic shred 30% of the target's magic uses for 3 seconds, non-stacking. Okay, so it doesn't stack. That's good. It just doesn't work like Shiv anymore. Shiv was so good because it had good access to backline, because it would basically, like, the extra sparks would apply the shred. So that was nice. And it had some cool synergies with, like, attack speed units if there's ever an AP attack speed unit. You know, it is what it is. I really like Shiv, so I'm going to miss it. I wonder why the changes, though. Because this wasn't an item I thought needed to get changed or would have been changed. Like, Runaan so far makes the most sense. Like, that one definitely needed some kind of update. But let's see. Statikk Shiv struggled to balance burst and support roles. Chain Lightning fit best on characters with high attack speed. Yep, that's what I was saying before. While the stats and Shred make a good supportive item. Yeah, that makes sense. Removing Chain Lightning to Artifact. Okay, so there's going to be some new Artifact there. I don't know if it's coming out on the 28th or not. And they're making it more like a Last Whisper. Okay. I don't like this change too much because I really like Statikk Shiv, but, you know, of course, let's see how it goes. And then, of course, they're getting rid of Shock Treatment for obvious reasons. It's okay, sure. What were the stats on Shiv? Let me just see. One thing that's really important to note, yeah, I did have less stats. So it gives you more stats, and then instead of having the extra damage effect, you have just the Shred and Sunder. Something that's really important with Shiv as well is that Radiant Statikk Shiv, or this Statikk's Favor, is one of the best Radiant items in the game. So I'm actually curious to see how the Radiant item is going to change for some of these, because Statikk Shiv, it just gives so much stats in terms of, like, just like the amount of damage that it does, the magic damage it does, in addition to the AP and the attack speed that it gives. This was just an overstated Radiant item, so I'm curious to see how that's going to change, because they're obviously going to change it to match. There's going to be some Radiant Void Staff or something like that. Guinsoo. Oh, I didn't know they were changing Guinsoo. Let's see what Guinsoo says. So reworked. Okay, ability power same, attack speed the same. These are just because they're using those components. Makes sense. And then instead of attacks granting 5% attack speed, grant 6% stacking attack speed per second. All right. I'm trying to calculate in my head if it's how similar it is. I think this is cool. But there are a lot of units that love to just auto attack. It might shake up like what items are best on some units. Like Guinsoo is one of those core items in my opinion, where it was always like really like there was like a Guinsoo user every set, right? It's like, you know, like you either have an AD Guinsoo user, you have an AD caster, or you have like AP units that were usually casters. So it always like had like a role on a unit. So I'm curious how that's gonna change. I don't think it's gonna change too much, because like imagine you auto attack once every second until you ramp up. Now you're granting 6 every second. I feel like it just makes it a little bit more consistent in some cases. So that's fine. And this might also be immune to stun, right? A big thing was Guinsoo's users getting stunned. If you're getting the attack speed per second, then if you get stunned, you're not in that much of a deficit, which is actually pretty massive. But I think this rework is mostly, I don't know if this 6% attacking stacks though. Like if it double or triple Guinsoo, because that was the main issue, I think. Right, like a lot of times if somebody was a good Guinsoo holder, a lot of times 2 Guinsoos was really good. And a lot of times having a Guinsoo, you really want to have a bow item to give yourself starting attack speed to ramp up the Guinsoo more. So it's actually very limiting. A lot of times you have to build towards it in a very detailed way, which I think is probably why it's getting changed. It's probably just because of like, you know, double Guinsoos and or like, you know, red buff Guinsoo and or like, you know, bow Guinsoo items to make it ramp up fast. Let's see. With attack speed that's stacked on attack, old Rageblade scaled too aggressively with itself, making stacking Rageblades one of the best. Okay, yeah, so it's the stacking Rageblades. It's kind of what I was saying as well, a little bit. New version has the ramping, but it does it in a more consistent way. Okay, I think that's fine, right? It just makes it more consistent. It could be a buff to a lot of those Guinsoo comps because it could get you a lot faster attack speed bonuses before having to wait to like get up to that point. Like you might hit critical mass earlier. So we'll see how it plays in practice, but okay, I don't see it being too much of a difference. It might actually make this item a lot more flexible because some units that didn't auto attack a lot or didn't have strong base attack speed weren't good Guinsoo holders. So now just giving you attack speed per second means that you're not reliant on your base AS, which might help out the item being a little bit more flexible. Next we have Sterak's Gage. So Sterak's Gage, I don't know. I actually like Sterak's Gage. I feel like some units really love it, and then some units it's like, okay. Let's see what's happening. So they're increasing health, making extra AD, okay. Omnivamp. Oh, so now it's an Omnivamp item. That's actually really interesting. Because that makes it, that might free up some builds. Like some builds, a lot of times you're playing Sterak's and you need to play Hodge or Bloodthirster. And then you get, at 60% health, you gain an 80% max HP shield that decays over 4 seconds. But what was it now? What's the change? Sorry, I'm not familiar enough with Sterak's ability. Once per combat at 60% health, gain 25% max health and 35 attack damage. So now, instead of gaining max health and attack damage, you just gain a shield. At 60% health, gain a shield that decays over 4 seconds. So now it just gives you a shield. And it's 80% shield, and it gives you 10% Omnivamp, and it gives you a little bit more AD to compensate for the fact that it used to give you the AD before. I like the old Sterak's Gage, because what's the difference between this and Bloodthirster? I think that's why I'm confused, right? So Bloodthirster is at 40% health, gain a 25% max health shield, and it gives 20% Omnivamp. So at 40%, you get 25% max health shield, and here at 60%, you get an 80% max health shield. For 4 seconds versus 5 seconds, that's like whatever. So what's the big difference here? So like, why would you ever want to make Bloodthirster now? Just for 10 more Omnivamp? I guess. That's actually really interesting. Because I feel like this takes the place of Bloodthirster on certain comps. Like there's a lot of comps where you play Bloodthirster for the shield, right? So like, let's say like a Zed, for example, right? Zed, a lot of times you go like double Omnivamp and he dives the backline. That's like a rough example. Or you're excuse me. Or you're playing something like a Rengar or some reroll line that has like a bunch of stuff. Also, somebody said that like whenever I play this, it's like distracting. I'm just gonna skip to the mystery dungeon song and go back here. What was I saying? A lot of times when you're making double Omnivamp, the Bloodthirster actually adds a really good effect and give you the HP shield. It's kind of like a second lease at life a lot of times, because like you just stop taking damage for a while and you can just like survive and have time to heal up. So now this gives you Omnivamp and it gives you that ability as well, while also giving you HP and AD. So especially on AD attackers, I feel like this is going to take the place of Bloodthirster in some builds. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's not the case, because Bloodthirster still gives a shit ton of Omnivamp, right? 20% Omnivamp. But like when I say Zed, for example, Zed is Slayer, so he already has some Omnivamp. So like this might actually be like a big buff to some of those style of comps, if that makes sense. I'm unsure why the big change though. Smallish amount of health mid combat is hard to appreciate. Okay, I guess so. That makes sense. While it does hook specific unit kits, a quick window survivability is proving more universal. Yeah, this makes sense, right? But that's why a lot of times you paired it with Bloodthirster anyways. Like, I just feel like this is like a power corrupt Bloodthirster on certain units. But of course, the Omnivamp maybe is too little. I don't know. But it's definitely going to be better for sure, right? Because like a lot of times, like Bloodthirster was non-negotiable and Sterak's was negotiable. Now it's like the other way. Alright. Guardbreaker renamed to Striker's Flail. Okay, let's cut the music for a second. I hate changes like this. I'm going to tell you guys now. I'm still going to call it Guardbreaker probably for a while. Like, can we be real here? I'm not going to remember to call it Striker's Flail. Like, that doesn't even roll off the tongue. Same thing applies to all these other items, by the way. This is why, like, you know, hey, you know what's cool? Everybody that's watching this video now, you guys have a moment, like those other moments with, like, TFT. Like, you know, like, when everybody, like, calls a fawn, instead of calling it, like, a tactician's crown, they're like, it's a fawn, because it used to be called a force of nature. And, like, you know how there's, like, items or stuff where people are like, oh, that's, like, a Kekone, or, like, the, Adaptacone, and it's, like, it's not, because it's, like, it's an adaptive helm, right? Like, now, like, people are gonna call this item a static Shiv. They're gonna be like, oh, I'm making a Shiv, but it's actually gonna be a void staff. It's gonna be confusing as shit. But now you guys all take part in it together. Isn't this like a cool journey that we're having? This is so hype, because I didn't have a YouTube channel before when they changed the items. Or I did, but I didn't like update on item changes and stuff. That's cool. Now we can all like misname things because they changed the names. But anyways, Striker's Flail. So this I think Guardbreaker for the longest time, if you watch my channel, I'm a big Guardbreaker enjoyer. It's a really good use of items. It has a lot of really good item pairings, and its effect was really good on a lot of different units. Guardbreaker used to be mostly like an AoE user item, because basically like if you hit AoE, you're like bound to hit somebody's shield, which is gonna proc the Guardbreaker effect. But eventually it just like by nature of like other items getting reworked or changed or like buffs and nerfs, it actually gives a good amount of stats. It's really flexible on both AD and AP, and it also gives you crit chance and damage amp, which is it's not like exactly unique, but it's like really good for like to slot in many different types of build paths, right? If you're going like a full crit build, it worked. If you're going full damage amp, it worked. And then it used two components that otherwise didn't have the greatest of items to make. Like a lot of times belt is mostly utility and glove is kind of a little bit awkward. It's like very like situational. It was a very flexible, good item. So I'm really worried to see if they change anything, because I'm a big Guardbreaker enjoyer. But I'm assuming they're going to remove the Guardbreaker effect, like the hitting of the shield. But let's see, 150 health, that's the same. Attack speed is the same. Crit chance is the same. 10% base damage amp. And then crits grant 5% damage amp for 5 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. Okay. I mean, I don't like the change because I like Guardbreaker, but I'm probably just biased, so maybe it's for the better. What was old Guardbreaker? Guardbreaker, it gives 25 when it hits a shield, but did it have base damage up? I always forget. Yeah, it's 25 after it's a shield, so it's 10 base and then 15 additional. So now instead, what are we getting? We're getting 15 if we hit within 5 seconds crits with 10%, and I think all the other stats are the same, right? Because they look the same. Yeah. Okay. This makes it less flexible in my opinion, which is what I don't like. That's why I'm saying I don't like it. But of course, it is what it is. We'll see how it plays out. Maybe the new version is better. So when it says crits grant 5% damage up, that means you want to realize a crit, which means now it's going to be a little bit more forced to be an item that you want to build with crits. Which wasn't the case all the time. It was a really good item pairing before, but now it feels more essential to get that extra damage amp. Additionally, it needs to stack 3 times. So if you're not an auto attacker with high crit, I mean, it should stack within 5 seconds, right? I'm just saying, like, I think like you need more attack speed to get this to proc fully, like to have a constant uptime on it. Or you need really high crit chance as well. Like this as a standalone item now feels like a lot weaker, right? Because before as a standalone item, you can get like 25% damage amp. here as a standalone item, you might not get the crits with the critical chance only being 20%. So as a standalone item, it feels like you're not going to proc this additional effect as often, and that makes it a lot more narrow, which I don't personally like. But the item was really strong. I would have liked just a rework of stats, but I wonder why. Like, if they bring up the AoE stuff, I don't even think that's super relevant anymore, but maybe it is. Let's see. Guardbreaker's focus on shield without being specifically anti-shield, placed in a weird spot of being great on AoE champions who can benefit from the additional damage and being a rogue shielded unit. This is true. This is 100% true, but that's not only the case. It was also really flexible outside of that, but maybe that's just me. By moving the damage I'm triggered to apply on crit, makes it easier to build into further sharpens the identity as the perfect pair for crit. So I talk a lot about it being a good crit pair, but now I think that makes it a lot more narrow, if that makes sense. I think that's my bigger issue with it, is that now you have to use it as a crit build item, or is how it feels, or that's the way I read into it. So we'll see how it works out. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you do get enough crit chance to get like enough damage amp off of it. Maybe it's still going to be like an okay, like top of the, like, you know, top off your board style item slam. But man, like I'm already not having fun, and then they're just taking away all my favorite things. Like, they got rid of Statikk Shiv, they got rid of Guardbreaker. What's next? Like, what's next? They got rid of Adam of Visage too, and now they're adding new artifacts. Oh my god, I have to make a new one. Oh, chat, do I make a new Ornn artifact guide? Oh, it's so much work. It took me weeks to make that one. I literally spent weeks on it, and then I got a bunch of people harassing me saying that I put no effort into it, even though I fucking spent 2 weeks doing it. And now there's new artifacts. Ugh. Flicker Blade. Okay, let's see what this one does. 15% attack speed, 10 AD and 10 AP. Attacks grant 5% stacked attack speed. Okay, so it's just Guinsoo. This is the Guinsoo turned into Ornn artifact. And then every 5 attacks, you get 4 attack damage and ability power. So everybody that's a Guinsoo holder, this is going to be a good artifact on the Guinsoo holder. So that's actually really easy, right? We took an item that we already knew how to build around, and it's just new item. Okay, so that makes sense. I don't like adding new artifacts, by the way. I'm not a big enjoyer of all the artifacts, and of course, to each their own. If you enjoy having a bunch of artifacts to play around and like ripping open an artifact anvil, go ahead. I come from the times where there was like 5 artifacts and they were all really broken, and you would just put them and they were really flexible. I feel like right now we lost one of the most flexible Ornn artifacts again, which in the form of Anima Visage, and instead we now have another very specific thing, right? This is only going to be good on Guinsoo holders. So think your Aphelios, your Twisted Fates, your somebody else, Xeres, for example, right? Like, okay, sure, I guess. Like, sure. Indomitable Gauntlet. Ooh, this sounds new. What's this? 450 health, 20 armor and MR. Holders move speed is drastically reduced. Okay, so move speed is something that's really important with melee units a lot of the time. So we'll see how this goes. Like move speed is like how fast your unit runs to another unit. Like, for example, Mittens increases move speed. Move speed is really important because if you have a unit like an Omnivamp unit, think like a Shaco, for example, or a Rengar or something, right? Like, you never want them to be just wandering around looking for their wallet. You don't want them to be walking around saying, oh, where did I drop my wallet? Oh, I don't know what to do. Like, you want them to be like glued to a unit, attacking them to have that Omnivamp uptime. So reducing move speed is going to be a little bit awkward, but it could maybe, we'll see what it does. Gain 10% max health, stun immunity, and pull the current target into melee range. Okay, so this is like the Thorns, what was it called? There was an anomaly last set that was like this. This is basically like your unit is basically stuck in the front. They can't be stunned, but they like grab people. So this is like a frontline thing that you put on a Giga Tank that you then pull the units close into them. So this could be really good on frontline tanks if you're going for a solo tank, and probably like reroll tanks. Like, I can imagine this is good on a Jarvan because you don't care about the move speed. You just want them to stand still, and they're just gonna pull in units and wreck them. Okay, this seems cool. This seems cool. Yeah, Deep Roots. If you're a Deep Roots anomaly enjoyer, then you have this artifact. So this is to take the place of Anima Visage. This seems somewhat flexible. This actually makes me a little bit happier, because maybe now this will be like, you know, an okay item to make for in place of this. I'm curious to think if there's any really good users on it, because it doesn't give like offensive stats. It's mostly defensive stats, right? Health and armor and MR. So I can't imagine it being like crazy broken on any one particular unit. It looks like it's mostly just tank, and I'm not sure who can make great use of it. Statikk Shiv. Okay, so now they're taking the Shiv. I'm assuming there's just gonna be no shred, and it's just gonna be a like the third attack ability thing, right? So 25 AP, 20 attack speed. Every third attack deals 50 plus 50% of the holder's ability power as bonus magic damage to 4 enemies. That seems like a lot to me, because 50 and 50%. So let's assume you have like, I don't know, like 100 AP or something like that. If you have 100 AP, 50 and 50% of the AP is 100, right? One of the most broken items in the game right now is Radiant Statikk Shiv, right? Like that seems like numbers you would reach, right? I think it gives like, I think Radiant Statikk Shiv is 90, right? 95. Every third attack deals 95 damage and 30% 8 enemies. So this is 8 enemies, so it's not as many enemies. This seems crazy, right? Because like, what if you pair this with like Archangels or something? Like imagine like Twisted Fate, Archangel, Statikk Shiv, Guinsoo, or something like that. Like this just seems really good on like auto attackers that scale their AP. I'm not sure if there's any other ones that do that, but we'll have to think about it a little bit more and see how it works out when it comes into live set. This seems really interesting of an item, but once again, it seems very specific, because this third attack being most of the damage is what you really want to have proccing multiple times. So it seems like you really want it on attack speed unit, so it has to be an AP attack speed unit, right? Okay, artifact is moved to the artifact space as a carry item. No longer provides MR shred. Updated art. Okay. Sure. Okay. We'll see how it goes. Titanic Hydra. I think this is the last one. I'm looking at the end of the page. All right, last one. Last one, everybody. Last one, everybody. 300 health, 15 AD, 15 attack speed. Attacks deal 3% of the holder's max health plus 25% of their attack damage as bonus physical damage to target adjacent enemies. Wow. That seems broken. 25%. So it's definitely not a reroll unit, right? This seems like... Oh my god. Could you reroll Mundo with this? Oh my god, that sounds broken on reroll Mundo. Like if you just rerolled Mundo carry. Holy shit, like I'm a Mundo enjoyer. But this seems really, like if you can find a bruiser to put this on, is that not crazy? 3% of the holder's max health. So let's say you have 4,000 health. 3% of 4,000 is 120 120-ish, right? Like 120 damage. Every auto attack doing 120 plus 25% of their AD if you're Slayer. You're doing like 200 damage a hit. You're just chunking. And it gives some attack speed. Holy, is there anybody else that works really good on? Let me think. Who auto attacks a bunch? Oh, Shaco. Oh god. It could be good on Shaco. I don't actually know. That's hard to say. But definitely like a Slayer build, right? And then it's also, it doesn't have to be a frontline unit, right? It's just max HP. Oy. Okay, with Runaan Furnishing, it was fun. Hydra will be splash attack in a less specific way. Okay. Yeah, it even hits adjacent. It hits multiple. The best user will be AD Bruisers. Abessa Warwick? What? Okay, yeah, like a Warwick and last. I don't know. I think it's better on like a tank. Don't you get so much more scaling that way? I guess it is 25% AD, so it could be good on other units. I was just thinking about like a Mundo, for example. You get 6 Bruiser in, put him a Warmogs. The dude has like 7,000 HP, right? And he gets more HP from all sources as well. 3% of 7,000. He's doing like 200 a pop, and he's a Slayer. You put Slayer in, he gets like a bunch of AD anyways, and he just absolutely deletes units. But of course, that's just like my first take. This item looks like it's good. It just looks like a lot of damage, and it looks like there's some flexibility with it, right? Because as long as you have a good chunk of AD, I think it still makes use, and it gives you like splash damage. Could work really well on even a Zed, and you can assassinate backlines. Anyways, So these are 4.15 item changes. Okay, they're in PBE, so maybe we can try them out in PBE one time. I might have to try them out before I do my item guides. And then 14.5 goes live on May 28th. Okay, so that's good to note. But as I said before, this is just me reacting to it a little bit. I was gonna do item guides like I said, but with items changing, I might have to delay those item guides until like some of these hit live, which is really unfortunate for me because I have my whole content schedule that I'm trying to follow. But either way, I want to read them and react to them, and I thought it would be fun if I shared those immediate reactions on my channel, because I sometimes do that. Of course, if you like my content, make sure to like and subscribe. We're gonna go back to doing guides tomorrow and the day after. I might postpone my item guides a little bit because of this new information, and hopefully the content the last couple days has been enjoyable. Thanks for watching, have a great day, and see you. Bye bye.